let us discuss whether it is possible to know any form of energy. To know any object, we need to perceive the objects. And for perceiving any object, the nature provided us five sense organs, and they are the organ of seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, and touching. And using those sense organs, we perceive the color, smell, taste, touch, and sound of the surrounding of us, that is the observable universe. And based on those characteristics, we objectify the observable universe in five principal categories of objects, which are the solid, the liquid, the gas, the fire or plasma, and the space. Among them, the solid, liquid, and plasma or the fire possess the color. Air and space doesn't have any color, but air can be perceived by the organ of touch, but space cannot be perceived by any sense organ. However, it is full of action or energy which cannot be perceived unless there is an object which can interact with that particular energy. And we are going to discuss how that happens. And this is crucial to understand the gravitational energy or the gravitation. Okay, so let us consider this place. Whenever someone looks or goes into the place or just observe the place, they will basically perceive the stones, the the sky, the grass, the ground, the pillars, and all of them are consists of the color, smell, taste, touch, and sound. However, we objectify them as the solid, the gas, the liquid, the plasma, the air, the space. But after watching them, these are some other phenomena that comes into our mind. There is the size of a particular object compared to another object. We don't perceive the size. We only observe the solid or the liquid, etc. states. And since we don't observe the size, so in order to compare the size, we need to bring a frame of reference. And that is the three dimension. There is no three dimension. Three dimension is basically introduced by us to compare the sizes between different objects. And after objectifying anything, the shape gets embedded into our mind for future reference. And we give the shape a name, for example, the rock, the sky, the pillar, the grass, etc. And also the beautiful or ugliness of any object compared to the other objects. That is also going on inside our mind. So this comparison and impositions of different characteristics to the object is happening inside our consciousness, to be specific. Mind, sense organs, they are basically the component of the consciousness. Okay. And by the way, we are going to discuss the what is consciousness and what is mind, all those things in detail. Okay. To explain how different actions produces the color, smell, taste, sound, and touch, let us see one by one how the color is forming. So for color, we need different actions, namely the absorption emission spectroscopy or the refraction or reflection of the light. So these three are basically the phenomena or the actions that are taking place when the light is falling on the surface of any object. The surface molecules get excited, while absorbing the energy of the light, and after getting excited they come back to the ground state and emit the energy what we, and during this process the color getting formed and that we perceive by our sense organ. In case of refraction, the mechanism is different, and in case of reflection, the mechanism is also different. However, for all these actions, the responsible factor is the light, which is a form of energy. By the way, we don't perceive light, we only perceive the color, which is the consequence of these three actions. And we name the energy as light. We don't perceive light. Remember this. This is crucial thing to remember. This is fact. This is no imagination or any assumption. Okay. For smell, the corresponding action is the volatility of a chemical that is responsible for the particular smell, and the volatility also depends on the thermal energy. The more the thermal energy, the more volatile the substance will be. Then come the taste, which depends on the solvation of a particular chemical, which is responsible for a particular taste. And the solvation takes place inside our mouth, in the saliva, which is mostly aqueous. And after dissolving, the chemical can go inside the pores of our tongue. If it is not soluble in water, we won't be able to taste it. And the energy involved in the solvation is called the solvation energy, which is nothing but thermal energy. It can be exothermic or endothermic. Anyway, the term that is given for solvation is the solvation energy. The sound is the consequence of an action, which is the vibration of the medium. The medium can be the air, the liquid or solid, and the reason is the kinetic energy or the potential energy, etc., which basically facilitates the collision between two objects, and that produces the vibration in the medium, which immediately, instantaneously produces the sound. And the touch is due to the due to several actions, to be frank. I'm just listing here only two examples, which is the hot or coldness of an object while we are touching it. And also, while we are touching it, we feel the repulsion or the hindrance after coming to a certain vicinity. And that is due to the electromagnetic repulsion between the electronic clouds of the molecules of our skin and the object. So for these two actions, the corresponding energy is the thermal energy and the electromagnetic energy. By the way, we don't know or we cannot know the energies. We can only know the actions, and the consequences of the actions are the color, smell, taste, sound, and touch that we perceive either by our sense organs or using any device or instrument. Okay, so for all those energies that we discussed for different actions responsible for five principal perceivable characteristic of objects, the main source of those energies are the sun. Mostly all the energy is coming from the sun. However, the radioactive element present inside the earth crust can disintegrate by their own to produce electromagnetic radiation. And also in the lava inside the earth atmosphere, inside the earth crust, is also responsible for the heat or the thermal energy. So partly earth is self-sufficient in terms of energy, but that's nothing compared to the energy that it absorbs or that it gets from sun. Everything depends on the energy that is received by from sun. Okay, the sun is a self-luminous object. That means it's self-sufficient for producing light or electromagnetic radiation. And the reason is because the nuclear fusion reaction is happening constantly inside the sun, and which is indeed depending on the pressure and the temperature, and that also depends on the gravitational energy inside the sun. The sun, which is self-luminous object because of the nuclear fusion reaction going on inside it, the formation or all those things that are happening inside the sun is because it gets formed from another incident, and directly all the phenomena that is happening right now inside the sun is dependent on the formation, and the formation took place after the supernova explosion of another star. The dust, the gas which exploded out of that supernova explosion, those gets combined during after the explosion. They get combined due to the gravitational pull to form a new star and the nearby planets. And that is the crucial thing to understand. So those gas, those dust, they were just floating on the space, and the space is basically nothingness, right? But there is the energy inside the space. The space is not a empty vacuum. We feel it, or we feel it because our body or our sense organs, whatever you say, it's conditioned for the Earth's atmosphere. So whenever we are in the space, we feel problems. But that doesn't mean the space doesn't have anything. It's full of energy, and that energy will always interact with the object whenever the object is present in the space. So whenever this gas or the stardust is formed, they will eventually come together closer and closer and closer, and eventually they will form a new planet or a new star. And the energy that is responsible for this formation via the attraction between this gas or dust is called as gravitational energy. So if we name the energy inside the space as the unknowable energy, the moment there is a gas or dust or any object, they will feel the attraction with among each other, and after a sufficient period of time they will form an object, which, and this action is basically perceivable. And based on this particular attractive interaction, we named it gravitational energy. There is space, there is energy inside space. The gas, the dust are there, they come closer, they feel the attraction, they get combined together to form an object, and this action is attributed to the gravitational energy. To explain this phenomena of gravitation, we we introduced different frame of references. The most the most famous one is provided by Dr. Albert Einstein, and we all know what's he suggested as the frame of reference for this phenomena. By the way, that is an introduced frame of reference. We cannot perceive it. So anything introduced, it has to be imaginary, which is working well, but that doesn't mean it's true. It can be used for explaining certain stuff that is going on in the space, but it cannot be true because it is an introduced frame of reference that is working well right now, Maybe it can be improved later by introducing some other frame of reference. And this is the hard fact in the field of science. After maybe several decades, the new frame of reference comes and it basically replaces the old frame of reference. Anyway, so using that frame of reference, we can also create stuff. And that also doesn't mean the frame of reference is real. So this real unreal thing we will discuss in more detail, but right now I'm just explaining here because it's an important thing to mention during this discussion. Okay, so why the effect or why the creation which depends on this imagined or introduced frame of reference is unreal, because the frame of reference itself is unreal. So any creation based on that is unreal. It has to be unreal. And also, we are not creating anything new. There is only the solid, liquid, gas, fire, and space. So we are using them to make a different form of them. We are not changing anything, just creating new forms based on them. So it's complicated. It has to be discussed in detail. It's not that easy to understand. For now, I'm just letting you know this point. Okay, so this is a very important point that we will discuss in much detail. And also they look real because they fulfill our desires of creation and enjoyment, etc. Yeah, the thing that I just discussed is that there is only solid, plasma, air, liquid, and space. These are the principal categories of the objects that we perceive or we observe in the universe. Yeah, the another important thing is the objectification of this universal panorama. That is the whole spectrum of the color, the smell, the taste, the touch. All these aspects are together. They're a continuum. This is a continuum or a panorama that we are observing. But the objectification of this panorama is going on inside our mind, and how this objectification is done by creating discontinuation within the whole continuum of this universe is is yet another more important discussion that we are gonna have later. Okay, so these 5 points I'm just mentioning here just to poke you guys a little bit. Okay, so let's go the next slide. So all energies are interconvertible, just as we discussed that how the gravitational energy is named. So this gravitational energy is very active inside the star, and that creates the immense pressure and temperature, which indeed is the reason for the fusion reaction. There is an action that is going on, and that action is actually producing another form of the energy, which is the electromagnetic energy. So just look at this beauty or magic or whatever you name it, or stupidity maybe, that there is a unknown energy present in the space that's producing an effect called the formation of a planet or a star from the dust or the gas cloud, and we name it gravitational energy. And that gravitational energy is responsible for all sorts of chemical or nuclear reaction that is going on inside the star. That action then again producing another form of energy, which we call it electromagnetic energy. So all the energies are interconvertible with each other through interaction with different objects. So it's the same energy that is named as gravitational energy, which is responsible for the fusion reaction going on inside the star. Everything is interconnected. Don't say that the fusion reaction is independently it can happen. It cannot happen. It's dependent on the gravitational energy. And the gravitational energy is nothing but an unknown form of energy which is responsible for the formation of a star or the planet. And after the fusion reaction, the electromagnetic energy is another form of energy that is released. And we say that the energy is getting transformed without the possibility of knowing what energy is. So we are basically helpless to designate the form of energy based on how it is interacting with a specific object. So the gravitational energy can only interact with gas or dust kind of particles to form a planet or star. And after forming the planet and the star, they will also interact with each other. They will pull each other. We can compare these in case of the following example. So let's say the electrical energy is passing through the high resistance wire. For example, the filament inside the bulb. And due to the high resistance, it will produce the hotness, and after sufficient heat, it will form color, because there will be the absorption spectroscopy going on the filament surface. So the color that is forming here is due to the absorption emission spectroscopy, which is one of the causes for the color. And it can be atomic in case of plasma, because in case of plasma, the atomic absorption spectroscopy is going on. And in case of other objects, like any objects that we see, it's including our body, the skin, eye, everything, there the molecules are involved for this spectroscopy, and it's called the molecular absorption emission spectroscopy. The phenomenon is same: the electron getting excited, then coming back in the ground state, releasing the energy, and this action is basically forming the color. So yeah, let's consider another example where electromagnetic energy released from the sun, it reaches the earth or any other non-luminous object, let's say the moon, and after entering the atmosphere, it produces different sorts of actions, like the heat in the atmosphere, the motions in the fluids, the air and the liquid. Then the heat can produce all sorts of chemical reactions in the environment, and also the light can produce photochemical reactions. We based on these actions, we categorized or we designated different form of energies. For example, the electrical energy, kinetic energy, light as an energy, thermal energy, potential energy, etc. Right? So the energy is same, but its name is superimposed or imposed based on the the actions which is specific for a specific object, right? Also, if you consider the whole electromagnetic spectrum, it's continuous, it is interchangeable with each other. So these are some other examples where the first entry is for the electrical energy uh, getting passed through the high resistance. This is the one that we just discussed before, in the previous slide. And it produces the color, which is attributed to the light as a new energy. And then again, the electrical energy can pass through a solenoid, producing the magnetism, and that magnetism is attributed to the magnetic energy. So the electrical energy can be converted into magnetic energy. The magnetic energy can be converted into kinetic energy through motions. And also the light, when it falls on the surface of metal or semiconductor, there is movement of electrons, and this action is attributed to the electrical energy. So all sorts of energies are interconvertible with each other. So when we want to know an object, we need to use a energy source which will interact with that object. And whenever we apply that energy, let's say it can be light to see the object, or it can be any other form of energy which we are going to supply it through any specific instrument, let's say X-ray, or any other instrument which will throw a certain form of energy to know what the object is. And as soon as the energy will interact with the object, it will produce an action or behavior with respect to that applied energy. And the action or the behavior is not actually what we want to know. We want to know the object, but instead of that, we get the actions or behavior which is specific according to the specific energy that we are applying. So you see it's impossible to know any object. And the same thing is applied in case of energy. Let's say we want to know an energy, and to know the energy, the detector or the tool that we are going to use to determine what form of energy it is, we have to interact the energy with an object. And the moment the object will interact with the energy, it will produce an action or behavior with respect to the applied object. And we are going to observe the actions that are going to be produced, not the energy. So here again, it is impossible to know any energy. The same is for the object. Neither of them can be ever known, and this is a hard fact. Nobody can deny it. Okay. Another way of understanding it will be like the following diagram. So let's say there is a form of energy or a form of object, and I am trying to know what the energy is or the object is. And to during that process of knowing, I have to introduce another object or energy which are going to interact with the energy or object that I'm going to know. And this interaction will lead to the production of an action, which can be termed as a behavior or communication, whatever, because we are going to observe that in particular, not the object or the energy, right? And any action or behavior or communication cannot be the object or the energy that we want to know. It can only give us a very tiny amount of details about that energy or object that we actually want to know. You see, it's impossible to know an object or a form of energy. And we can compare it with an interaction between two person. Either of them want to know about the other person. They will ask or they will do something to know. And while interaction, there will be action or behavior or communication. And those will tell nothing about the man, because that will be negligible amount of detail that one can get about a person. So it's impossible to know about anything. And also the actions or the behavior or the communications are ever changing phenomena, because they depends on the surrounding energy or the surrounding object. And everything is changing each moment. There is nothing that is not changing, or there is nothing which is fixed, not changing, right? So the moment one will try to analyze or try to know something, it's already changed into something else. So it's a hard fact that we cannot know any form of energy. All the forms of energy are named by us, and those names are coming from our mind. It's superimposed or unreal entities, which are helpful in day-to-day life for practical stuff, but that's not real. And we are going to discuss what superimposition is in detail, because that is the most important thing to know in order to know who we are. And that is the main thing that I'm going to present to you again and again and again, unless it is clear to all of us. If you have any question, any opposition to me, just say it in the comment section so I can further clarify. The problem is, I don't have any audience right now who will ask me questions so that the interaction will be smooth. So I'm just I'm just making these slides and creating questions, making these slides in a more presentable way. So that's the main problem right now. So it will be much more easier for me if you ask questions that will open new discussions. Thank you for your time.